Recibe un saludo muy caluroso y solidario desde Nueva Jersey. Muchas gracias por la honra de esta presentación. And I especially wanted to thank Mario Iribarren for his terrific translation of this book, and Professor Pablo Pozzi for the eloquent prologue for the book. The book is titled in English, Vietnam and Other American Fantasies. What I mean by that is that Vietnam, in the culture of the United States, is not any longer a nation or a people or even a war. What Vietnam means, when there's that word Vietnam, Vietnam is something that happened to us. So we have actually a textbook, a very prominent textbook, which has the title Vietnam, an American ordeal. Not only is Vietnam something that happened to us, but just something terrible that happened to us. And the true history of Vietnam and America's war in Vietnam has been buried under layer after layer of myths and fantasies. It was necessary to rewrite that history in order for the United States to continue and embark on a new path of war making in other parts of the world. And I think this is why in April 1991, President George H.W. Bush said, as he launched the first phase, what turns out to be a very long war in Iraq, he said, "By God, we've finally kicked the Vietnam syndrome." So by that point, Vietnam had become a syndrome? What is that? A disease, an addiction, some kind of affliction of America that we had to kick in order to embark on this new course of militarization. And so, what are some of the myths and fantasies? The dominant one is a story of the war, which goes like this: that there was this evil communist nation, a country called North Vietnam, and then there was a democratic country called South Vietnam, and the evil communist country of North Vietnam was invading the democratic country of South Vietnam, and so we, out of the goodness of our hearts or whatever, went to the aid of the democracy of South Vietnam to repel the evil invaders from North Vietnam. That's the overriding story. And that during the war, as the anti-war movement learned more and more about the true history, that official story was seen to be more and more an invention, just propaganda. Of course, in Vietnam, the Vietnamese always recognized there were no two countries. Vietnam is one country and has been one country for a couple of thousand years. The story was revised and revived beginning in the late 1970s, and especially in 1980, when Ronald Reagan, running for president, started describing the war as a noble cause. So that's the noble cause narrative, and part of that narrative is that, well, why didn't we do better there? What happened to us? And so one of the dominant myths and fantasies is that we were fighting with one hand tied behind our back, that somehow the military wasn't allowed to win the war. They were restrained from doing what the military really wanted to do, and they were just fighting this kind of feeble war, restricted by all these forces in the United States. The truth of the matter is that the United States used more high explosives on Vietnam than had been used by all other nations in all wars throughout human history. The truth is that we killed between 2 million and 3 million Vietnamese, that we used chemical warfare in a more intense way than was ever used before or since, again, in all of human history. So the truth is that this was a genocidal war, and it was ultimately designed to be a genocidal war. And then Related to that myth is the concept of the anti-war movement. And so the anti-war movement in these myths and fantasies consists of a bunch of hippies and rich college kids and pinko college professors and Jane Fonda, who was broadcasting from Hanoi and demoralizing the troops and so on. The fact is, as far as Jane Fonda's role, Jane Fonda's appearance in Hanoi was in October 1972, when there already had been a draft of the final peace accord, which the United States surrendered. The fact is that the anti-war movement was not primarily a movement of hippies and rich college kids. The leading edge of the anti-war movement was in the military. I have a whole chapter in the book about the anti-war movement that we are not supposed to remember, which is the movement which actually began in the military and reached its decisive moments because of what active duty and GIs and veterans did on the ground in Vietnam, on the ships that were in the Tonkin Gulf, right off Vietnam, and even in the Air Force, my old alma mater. I flew in the Strategic Air Command, not in Vietnam.